Thanks, Lisa. I'm sure your views up there are beautiful, but I think ours are better, if I'm honest. We managed to find a little opening, and now you can see the full glory of Tlalamba. Isn't she wonderful? I say it feels like months since I've seen a leopard. Once again, it's been long enough for me to now I'm seeing one again to just truly appreciate how spectacular these cats are. Look at the markings, just evolutionary perfection, if you ask me, or aesthetic perfection, perhaps. And you see she's lying just in front of that grass. Behind her, as you're looking at it, is a little drainage line, so if she was to fall down, let's hope not, to climb down into there, we really are going to struggle. But she seems to have decided to take a breather for now. Still haven't been able to see if she's got a full belly or anything like that. We haven't really seen her face from this angle. We're restricted to just her back, and she hasn't looked around. But she doesn't look skinny, she looks in good condition. I don't see the pelvis showing through, or any ribs or anything like that. I don't see any obvious injuries from this angle. So I think we can assume she is still doing well. Well, I hope at some point she will become a little bit more resident on Djuma. It seems that, say, in the period between this stint and my previous stint, where we were finding her very regularly in and around Central and Gary Dam and those areas, obviously because she had the youngsters and wasn't going too far. Since then, I mean, she's disappeared into Torchwood for a while. She's been spending time in Little Gowrie. I can only assume that she's got bad memories of that core, of what used to be, in my opinion anyway, the core area of her territory. But she has been seen on Damcam recently, and was seen at Tumbeta House, which is just up the road from Djuma as well. So she's popping in and out of the area. She's just exploring a little bit further than she would normally. But let's hope she spends a bit more time on Djuma now. Well, Tlalamba is still where she was. She hasn't moved. You can see she's breathing nice and regularly there. But now Paul's giving a beautiful look at those rosettes. Absolutely magnificent, geometric in shape to some extent, but also randomly positioned, and of course every single leopard slightly different from the next. The perfect camouflage, yellows, oranges and blacks. And then of course you've got, say, leopards like Tabumgumi, which have got those little dots in between the rosettes, rather similar to a jaguar. And I believe there was another leopard seen in between me leaving and coming back for this cycle who also had those spots, which is interesting to know. You can actually see up by the neck area, you can see she has got proper spots as opposed to rosettes, which is quite normal. And then one of the other ways that we would look at leopard markings to identify them, other than the obvious sort of, an unusual marking or a notch out of the ear or a scar, would actually be the sort of the bib around the chest area, which we can't see from here, but those are all fairly unique as well. So you can often look at the bib line, but the most commonly used way to identify the, almost said zebra, I'm getting confused with spots and stripes. The most commonly used way to identify these leopards is that whisker line. So the top row of spots above the whiskers on either side, they've normally got sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little spots just above the whisker line, and there are quite detailed records of each of those individuals, and that's the main way that we identify them. And one of the reasons for that is because obviously in areas where leopards are not quite as habituated as they are here, is there are organisations, and the lodges do it as well, put out camera traps and things to just try and get an idea of who is around. Oh, she's twitching her tail. I think she's fast asleep, like a dog twitching her legs. I actually saw a dog wagging its tail in its sleep the other day. That was quite cute. So anyway, so they put lots of camera traps up, and leopards often come and investigate strange things, particular eye height to leopards. So when they come close, they trigger the camera trap, and you often get a nice picture of their face close up, and even if they're just walking by left or right, you normally get a good visual of the face. So those records are kept on file, and then they can be compared. There's even software that was being developed for tigers. I don't know if it ever actually got to Africa in the end for use with leopards and things, whereby you could take a photograph of an animal and, a bit like you can do on the internet, you take a picture and search that picture and it'll bring back similar images. It's the same idea. You put in this picture of a tiger into some database and it would analyze the stripe patterns and give you back some possibilities of which individual it would be. Must actually go and see if that software ever got developed and brought over to Africa, because that would be very interesting. But there's a lot more leopards here than we realise. Again, in this sort of area, because they're all so habituated, or the majority of them are, we do see them regularly and we have a very good idea of them. But I was doing some private guiding about a month ago up in a reserve, probably about 100 kilometres north of here. Big reserve, 25,000 hectares, but fenced. And there you're lucky to see leopard at all. But they've got camera trap images of over 24 different individuals just in the last year and a half or so. So there are plenty of leopards around. They are just only seen when they want to be seen. Right, well, speaking of cats, let's send you back across to Cedric. I think he's gone to see if we can get another look at those Tlalamatis. Right, well, welcome back to the gorgeous Mr. Tlalamba. She is still sleeping nicely in the same spot. She did have a roll over and a bit of a stretch earlier, and has flopped over onto the other side. But other than that, we haven't had a great deal of activity. Our meddlesome hyena that chased her off the more open area has not been seen again. Obviously came around, had a good sniff of where Tlalamba was lying, and then lost interest and moved off. And we haven't seen him since. I believe that was Orion, that immigrant male. He was actually a very beautiful hyena for a male, and a big one for a male. I thought it was the first time I've seen him. So thank you for the help with the identification there. We were also chatting about leopard spot patterns and those whisker lines. And just for those of you who I know are keen Tlalamba followers, you probably know this, but those of you who aren't, Tlalamba's spot pattern is 5-5. So that means she's got 5 little spots, so that top whisker line on both sides of her face, both left and right. Now the other thing with leopards is that we all know they're very, very strong, and they're capable of dragging huge weights, potentially double their own body weight up into a tree if they absolutely have to. But I thought I'd set you a little quiz, because I was doing some reading the other day and found quite an interesting statistic. So moving away from leopards, but staying on the topic of strength, I thought I would ask you viewers, what do you think, and bearing in mind this is probably the papers that I was reading were from about 2010, so there may be some changes since. But according to that, what do you think is the strongest animal in the world compared to its body size? So what animal do you think is the strongest organism in the world compared to its body size? I'll give you a clue. It's not a leopard, and I'll also give you another clue, because probably a lot of you will go with an ant. It is not an ant. You're welcome to send your answers in, and I'll give you the answer a little bit later this afternoon. But it's amazing the weight that these leopards can carry up a tree. I've seen a baby giraffe in a tree before, that a huge male leopard. Many years ago, some of you who've been watching or been involved in this industry for a long time might remember what was called the Wallingford male. He was in the western sector of the Sabi Sands, and I remember the first time I saw him, I thought it was a lioness just from the silhouette, because he was so big. He tipped the scales, I think the guys were telling me, at around close to 90 kilograms, I think, which is very big. Normal, a big male leopard would be about 75. So he was an absolute beast. And yeah, they once found him with a baby giraffe in a tree. And that big neck flopping around everywhere. It's one very impressive feat of strength. All right.